Have you heard of Ihachi Nwanyi? It is a centuries-old tradition rooted deep within the hearts of Igbo culture, a practice that speaks of ancestral duty, familial continuity, and the weight of lineage. Ihachi Nwanyi is translated loosely as replacement by a woman. This is a cultural practice observed in certain communities of Igbo land, particularly in parts of Anambra and Imo states. This tradition dictates that when a family has no surviving male child, the last daughter may remain in her father's house, marry a man who bears children in the father's name, and continue the lineage. It is a practice driven by the belief that a family's name must never be extinguished. The origin of Ihachi Nwanyi date back to times when inheritance and legacies were paramount to survival and social standing. A man without sons was considered cursed, incomplete, or unfortunate. As society evolves, so did the need to adapt. Thus, Ihachi Nwanyi was born. It wasn't a practice taken lightly. It requires rituals, village consultation, and most importantly, the consent of the woman involved. She will forfeit her right to marry outside, stay in her father's compound, and raise children who will not bear her husband's name, but her father's. The bold move gave women a kind of power rarely seen in patriarchal Igbo society. But it came at a cost. They bore the burden of their entire lineage on their shoulders, and with it came scrutiny, resistance, and silent sorrow. Nneka was the youngest of 4 daughters in the family of Nze Obioma in Umuze village, Anambra State. Her 3 sisters had all married and left the compound, yet their father's heart remained heavy. He had no son. After years of hoping, praying, and visiting native doctors for solution, the old man called a meeting. He had decided Nneka would stay behind and become the Ihachi Nwanyi, the daughter who would give him grandsons to carry his name. At just 19 years, Nneka's fate was sealed. The villagers praised her, calling her a savior of her father's lineage. But inside, Nneka was torn. She had dreams of leaving the village, of becoming a teacher, of marrying her childhood sweetheart, Obinna. But now, all of that was over. Her role has changed from daughter to lineage bearer. Her name was now tied to legacy, not love. Nneka was married, not in the traditional sense, but through negotiation. Her family paid the bride price to a young man from a neighboring village named Ikenna. He moved into Nze Obioma's compound and became known as Onye Luru Nneka, the man who married Nneka. But unlike other husbands, Ikenna was not head of the household. He had no rights over the land, no say in family decision, and the children born would bear Nze Obioma's name, not his. This arrangement unsettled Ikenna, though he had agreed. The whispers and ridicule from his peers gnawed at him. "You are a woman in that house," they snare. At night, Nneka felt the weight of his frustration. Their marriage was strained. Love became duty. Affection turned to silence. Yet, Nneka endured it all for her father, for the land, and for the family's name. Nneka gave birth to 3 children, 2 boys and 1 girl. The boys were named after her father and grandfather, solidifying the lineage. The family rejoiced, and Nze Obioma felt pride again. The villagers came bearing gifts, hailing Nneka as the mother of names. Her children were raised as members of the Obioma family, inheriting lands, bearing titles, and securing the family tree for another generation. But as they grew older, the children began to ask questions. Where is our father's home? Why don't we visit his people? This innocent question sparked tension. Nneka tried to explain the tradition, but the children felt confused, lost in identity. Ikenna, feeling more like a stranger in his own children's life, distanced himself emotionally. Though the family name has been saved, something precious was missing: belonging. The compound that once echoed with laughter now buzzed with whispers. Women envied Nneka's elevated position, but mocked her behind closed doors. Man pitied Ikenna, but refused to say it aloud. The children faced awkward stares in school, where their peers asked why they live in their mother's house and not their father's. The legacy that Nzeobioma worked so hard to preserve began to feel like a prison for those living it. Even in family gatherings, Nneka noticed the difference. Her sisters were spoken of as married women, while she remained the one who stayed behind. The respect she was given was laced with pity. She has become both revered and restrained, a queen in a house she couldn't leave, a mother of sons who bore a name built on sacrifice. As Nzeobioma aged, he often sat under the Udara tree and watched his grandchildren play. He believed he has done the right thing. His name would not be forgotten, but deep inside, he knew he has clipped Nneka's wings. He has bound her to a destiny she never asked for. She smiled in his presence, but her eyes told stories of pain. Ikenna had grown more resentful. He rarely spoke to anyone in the compound. He spent most time away, drinking palm wine in silence. His manhood has been traded for legacy, and it haunted him. Nneka bore the emotional weight of two broken hearts, her husband's and her own. She wondered if preserving her father's name has been worth the emptiness she now felt. Nneka's eldest son, Uche, returned from university with a new perspective. He has studied sociology and has read extensively on gender roles, tradition, and identity. He approached his mother one evening. "Mama, why did you let this happen? Why are we not allowed to trace our father's roots?" His words cut deeply. They were not rebellious. They were curious, honest, and aching. Nneka explained everything, from the custom to the expectation to the sacrifices. Uche listened but frowned. "Maybe the name was saved, Mama, but were the people in it saved?" That night, Nneka cried. Her son has touched a wound she has hidden for years. The very legacy she was praised for had become a burden. Around Umunze village, murmurs began to rise. Younger women refused to stay back as Ihachi Nwanyi. One girl, Adako, ran away when her father suggested it. Another, Ifoma, challenged the elders openly. "Why must I be the sacrificial lamb for a name?" she asked boldly during a community meeting. The elders were furious, but the youths applauded. Change was coming. The practice of Ihachi Nwanyi, once sacred, was now being questioned. Women wanted more than a place in their father's compound. They wanted choice, autonomy, and futures of their own making. Tradition, it seems, was beginning to shake under the weight of modern thoughts. The elders of Umueze gathered one moonlight night to debate the future of Ihachi Nwanyi. Some insisted it was necessary to protect lineage, inheritance, and the honor of the ancestors. Others, like Nze Okafo, who had daughters and no sons, confessed to feeling torn. "Must we break our children to preserve our name?" he asked. Silence followed. A heated debate ensued. Was legacy more important than individual happiness? Could a family's name still live on if it came from a different path? For the first time in decades, the pillars of Ihachi Nwanyi trembled not from external criticism but internal reflection. The community stood at a crossroad. At a women's gathering held to discuss cultural practices, Nneka stood up to speak. Her voice, once silent, now carried weight. "I did what was asked of me. I bore children. I stayed. I kept the name. But in doing so, I lost a part of myself." The crowd listened in silence, captivated by her honesty. She continued, "Traditions are made by people, and people can change them. If my daughters ever face the same choice, I will tell her, live your life, not your father's dream." Her voice rippled through the room like a stone cast into a still stream. Change has found a voice. News of Nneka's speech spread. Some elders called her a disgrace. Some said she was brave. Families were divided. Some still practiced Ihachi Nwanyi in secret. Others rejected it completely. The village that once lived in cultural unity was now split between the old ways and the new dawn. Yet, in that division came growth. Dialogue began. Fathers asked daughters what they wanted. Women shared their dreams out loud. Even the town crier, once a staunch traditionalist, began to soften. Times have changed, he said one day, and maybe so must we. Uche, now a graduate, started a community group called Legacy of Choice. He invited elders, youths, women, and scholars to talk about culture, identity, and the agency. His mother, Nneka, became the group's advisor. Together, they helped others understand that honoring the past does not mean living in its shadow. They didn't call for Ihachi Nwanyi to be erased, but for it to be reimagined. Let women choose, Uche said. Let tradition empower, not enslave. And slowly, heart began to shift. People began to see that a name is not just carried by blood, but by stories, love, and freedom. In some corners of Igbo land, Ihachi Nwanyi still exists, quietly, silently. In families where the name still weighs heavy, but it is fading like chalk in the rain. Modern laws, education, religion, and women empowerment have challenged its roots. What was once celebrated is now whispered about. What was once a solution is now a question. But for some, it remains sacred, a memory of fathers who wanted to live forever through names, a reminder of the women who bore more than children, they bore the burdens. Ihachi Nwanyi is not just a practice, it is a mirror into people's souls, flawed, complex, but real. Have you heard of this culture, this tradition called Ihachi Nwanyi? Some call it noble, others call it oppressive, but in its center lies the truth of a people struggling to balance the old and new. Nneka's story is one of many. Some end in silence, others in strength. So, my dear viewers, should Ihachi Nwanyi be banned or continued? Should we honor tradition at the cost of freedom? Or should we let legacy be born, not from sacrifice, but from choice? At the end of the day, culture lives through us. We are its writers, its keepers, and if we choose, it changes or remains the same. If this story taught you, please give it a like, share with friends, and subscribe for more. Till next time, stay blessed and keep watching.